Want to mention that Larry, who is usually in Asheville, is away from Asheville for a little bit because he's getting some medical attention at Duke University and has been there for almost a week now, and we'll appreciate, I think, all our prayers and thoughts for him to get well and come back to Asheville. And when our temple reopens, we will all be hanging out at that point. Looking at participants, I think the Asheville participation in this is down to 3. Larry, Judy, and Laura. You're gonna get participation prize. As the pandemic hopefully is coming to an end, I think we will be losing people to samsaric demands. So along those lines, I want to say that starting from next week, we will meet also on Wednesdays. If you can, I know maybe your schedule has been arranged so that Wednesday this is not happening, but I would like for Wednesday to happen as well before everything opens up, at least in some parts of the world. Then more people drop out. So that's one reason. Another reason is if all goes well, I think I'll be in Nepal starting from middle of May for maybe a month. So I would like to finish our study of this book before that happens. So we still have chapter 5 to finish, which is a few more statements. Then we go to the resultant state of Buddhahood, which is chapter 7. Recalling that we simultaneously did 2 chapters at the beginning, 6 and 1. The reason being that we have evidence of that earlier on in the transmission of these statements, put together now called Gongchik. In some versions, chapter 6 seems to have been, what's chapter 6 here seemed to have been chapter 1. And so 6 and 1 in some ways, you could start with either of them. And I think when we did that, when we read 6 and 1 kind of side by side, we found that they kind of, especially in some places, I can't say everywhere, they mutually reinforce each other. And so you could see how 6 and 1, either place would be a good starting place. In some ways, chapter 1 is maybe addressing more theoretical questions, which is important because that is, framing our broader understanding. And then chapter 6 is more integrating the context and also not integrating. These statements are not meant to integrate. Again, I think it's helpful that we remember that these statements are like one-liners. That Gyalpa Jigten Simgon's main spiritual successor, Sherab Jungne, that Sherab Jungne kind of extracted from his years of serving and following his guru. After the passing of his guru, he wrote down these kind of provocative one-liners, you could say. I mean, no disrespect, but in common modern expression, we will say good one-liners. So here we call them vajra statements. So these are, like provocative, evocative, one-liners that Sherab Jungne remembered his teacher saying. And he felt that this is important to write down these pithy one-liners. These one-liners could come, at the end of a longer teaching that Kyopa Rinpoche gave. Or it could also have come from Kyopa Rinpoche kind of just saying one line like that and maybe walking off in response to something that is unfolding in front of him. Maybe he overhears. Maybe he walks into, some of his disciples having some animated discussion about some topic. And then he makes this one statement. Maybe then he retires to his room. So Sherab Jungne compiled all these one-liners. And then over time, he organized them into chapters. Yeah. And so in this way, it's important to understand that Kyopa Rinpoche himself did not intend for these one-liners necessarily to be put into these chapters, because these one-liners were given spread out throughout his life based on circumstances that turn up so that he was able to give these one-liners. Okay, so now statement 26 of chapter 5, which we started looking at, it says how so these like wrathful rituals, that you can find in the tantras. He says that, so he's not even like disputing that they work. I'm sure he thinks, some people with very powerful minds. See, powerful minds don't necessarily mean altruistic minds. Just as a lot of people in human history who have created a lot of non-virtue had very powerful minds, very sharp, very focused, but their sharpness and their focus went in the direction of non-virtue. So likewise with these magical rites, very sharp, very powerful minds could use these magical rites to strike down an enemy. In fact, in the tantras, there are places where it says you can strike down your enemy if you do the following with a very powerful mind, with a very focused mind. Now, if you yourself right now have a hard time kind of accepting like this to be literal, you can even think of this as like psychological warfare, psychological intimidation, right? Recognizing and knowing how somebody is susceptible to certain fears. So you do that to them and you cause harm. So Kyopa Rinpoche here wants to say, he says, whenever these things are mentioned in the tantras, in the Buddhist tantra, I shared on the Trikong Dhammakirti International Sangha on Facebook, one possible definition of tantra that I say, this is not our definition, okay? Because the word tantra, it's almost like, an empty word waiting to be filled with meanings. So there's other meanings that people fill it. Let's just say that if you're at work, don't Google the word tantra. It will pull up, links that if you click, it might get you in trouble. So here, it's like in the Buddhist tantra, even when, stories like this, or examples of saying, oh, this is, you can kill your enemies this way or that way, doing this ritual or that ritual, right? Using translation, you can, if you want to substitute, using this psychological intimidation or that psychological warfare or that psychological weapon, to cause the other person to be defeated. It says that here it is merely to show, or not merely, maybe you can say at most this is the Buddha telling us that if we know how to use these techniques, we can use these techniques to overwhelm someone who might be causing harm otherwise, to overwhelm them, but never to harm them. Never to harm them. Cannot use these to get rid of enemies. At most, these can only be done as a way to overwhelm someone who might otherwise create a lot of harm for themselves and others. So in that famous story of Captain Compassion, maybe you could say that if Captain Compassion had these techniques, these abilities, maybe he need not have killed that would-be murderer. He could use these things, to terrify the guy from his plans. So again, at most, that is what these rituals are meant for. I'm not going to go into, there are very interesting things discussed in the notes provided by Sobish on this, which I'm not going to go into, but at your own leisure, at your own diligence, you can read that. And if you have questions about that, you can ask me directly, or when we have class, something like that. Because there Sobish kind of brings in more kind of like kind of gives us a fuller discussion, as we say, to complexify the issue. Because again, none of these things are so straightforward. There are more complex issues going on. So in that way, these Vajra statements are profound, because there are so many layers to what they are saying. Now, there is one slippery interpretation that involves like emptiness, that sometimes is used to kind of explain how these rituals of destroying might be like possible or might be recommended. And basically the argument runs as follows. If you are able to kind of powerfully perceive the emptiness, the ultimate emptiness of a particular being, a particular entity, then even if you need to destroy them or kill them or liberate them, sometimes liberate is a code word, then there is no fault. Of course, even in these circumstances, they say only if this entity, this being, is at the danger of causing a lot of harm to themselves and others. If you are able to meditate on the emptiness, the ultimate emptiness of this being, this person, then when you do these ritual of liberating them, freeing them, killing them, murdering them, it's without fault. Sometimes this argument has been used. And Sobish even says, sometimes you feel like Chodra might actually say that. And this is given Chodra's reputation as this great magician that I told you about last time when we had class. Yeah? But Sobish says this. This is at the end of his notes on page 513. He says, but I do not recall such an emptiness argument existing either in the writings of Jigten Sumgun or in the early commentaries, meaning Dorshema or Rinjangma. He says, I have not come across such an argument given. And so, meaning in the 12th century, when Kyoba Rinpoche was alive and his immediate disciples, there's no evidence of that community interpreting things this way. Fast forward a few hundred years later to the 17th century, to the time of Chodra, it seems like Chodra, is sort of saying that. Yeah. Then he points out further, Sobish, he says, moreover, in the Sanjaya Gata itself, which is a quote that Chodra gave. So what is that quote? Bottom of 512. For instance, all those to be killed, whoever they are, the crowd of people conjured up at a crossroad by a magician, who then cuts off the heads of many thousands of them. Similarly, the Bodhisattva knows all beings to be like an emanation. For him, there is no fault. Yeah, so you see, so this is an example, Chodra quoting an Indian Buddhist text that seems to say, if bodhisattvas can know that these beings actually have no essence, then there is no fault. So this is a dangerous interpretation. Slippery. But interestingly, Sobish points this out. He says, but so in the Sanjaya Gata itself, we find the above quote. And he says, but actually, if you look at the Sanjaya Gata, rather than Chodra's quote of Sanjaya Gata, if you go to the text itself, it doesn't say there is no fault. It actually says, he is without fear, instead of he is without fault. For him, he is without fear. Thus, the verse, at least as it appears in the Sanjaya Gata itself, seems to be focused on the Bodhisattva's freedom from fear of samsaric suffering, despite the illusory appearances that he perceives when he is born in hell, because he has understood these appearances to be an illusion. So Chodra, Sobish is saying, that Chodra might have misquoted the Sanjaya Gata, because the Sanjaya Gata in its original form, at the bottom of 512, that quote is not for him there is no fault. For him there is no fear. That's a big difference. Yeah. So meaning that, yes, there are text where the Buddha says, if you can meditate and understand the non-reality of all experiences, then if you have to be like Captain Compassion and do what Captain Compassion did, then even as he was born in the hell realms, his experience of hell realms is mitigated, is soothed by some level of realization that all these tortures of hell are products of my mind. So again, the emphasis of Kyoba Rinpoche and his early disciples is, do not think that because you are doing something out of altruistic motivation, therefore you are scot-free karmically. That you are not scot-free. You don't get away from karmic fruits. It's just that when the karmic fruits come, you are not as affected, because it's sort of like, like we find ourselves sometimes. I'll give an example. Sometimes when we find ourselves inside a nightmare and we know it is a nightmare, so it's less terrifying, but still terrifying because we can't get out of the nightmare. Have you had that experience? Yeah, you know. So the difference between a bodhisattva and a non-bodhisattva, let's say Captain Compassion scenario. One, Captain Compassion is in fact a 6 Bhumi bodhisattva. 2, Captain Compassion is not a 6 Bhumi bodhisattva. The significance of 6 Bhumi being, according to Kyoba Rinpoche, at the 6th Bhumi, the bodhisattva realizes then that all experiences are projections of his own mind. He has that level of realization. So, for Captain Compassion, the 6th Bhumi bodhisattva, in his following lifetime, he was in the nightmare of the hell realms, and he had an understanding. Okay, this is the nightmare. Whereas if it's Captain Compassion without 6 Bhumi attainment, then he would not even know that this is a nightmare. He would just think this is real. And all his sufferings would be very real. Maybe so real until he would give up bodhicitta. And then it's very harmful. So if we go back to Kyoba Rinpoche and the early period, their interpretation is always not so much that, somehow you can subvert the workings of karma. You cannot subvert the workings of karma, but you can work with how karma works. Just as scientists and technology people in the world today, they do not subvert the principles and the laws of nature. They work with the laws of nature. That's why something that weighs, a ton, right, can fly in the sky. It's not subverting the laws of nature. It's figuring out the laws of nature and working with it. Vajra statement 27. The Vajra hell is Avici hell. So you will find in tantric texts mention of vajra hell. So this is, especially like if you break your vajrayana samayas, or vajrayana bond, you will throw yourself and all those involved in that bond, meaning your teachers, meaning your fellow Dharma practitioners, your fellow Vajrayana practitioners, you will hurl all of you down to Vajra hell. So there are warnings like that. So this statement says, Vajra hell is essentially Avici hell. And what is Avici hell? Avici hell is the lowest hell mentioned in the general non-Vajrayana teachings. In other words, Gyalpa Rinpoche is saying that it's not like there's Avici hell, which is the worst hell, and then Vajra hell is like even more worse. He says they are the same thing. And so then you're like, so what's the take-home lesson here? Why is it important for us to know that Vajra hell is Avici hell? Well, first of all, let's look at what is he speaking to. What he's speaking to is people claim that Vajra hell is worse than all other hells, including Avici hell. And Gyalpa Rinpoche said, no, Vajra hell is Avici hell. They're the same. Okay, so now let's look at the commentary. Since there are no greater pains that can be experienced in Avici hell, it is well known as no greater torment, which is another name for Avici, also called no greater torment. Regarding its joining with the term Vajra, it is so that, as explained before, the joining of the term Vajra with all kinds of phenomena by mantra practitioners indicates the play of the union of method and discriminative knowledge. So this statement now is still a little mysterious, okay? I admit that it's still a little mysterious. Yeah? So there's a footnote to statement 511, which is statement 511 is, so here is, it alludes to that because it says, right, regarding its joining with the term Vajra, it is so that, as explained before, and explained before where? Sobish identifies that with statement 11 of chapter 5, which is the original state of the Vajra body is the profound wheel. There, in that context, it is saying, that what is called the Vajra body is not something that is different from this body. It's just that in the Vajrayana context, we call it the Vajra body. So here in this context, we call it Vajra hell, but it's not a separate hell. Okay, again, so why? Let's see. Regarding the case of being born there in this Vajra hell, which is also Avici hell, the Guru Panchashika, which is a text teaching 50 ways to serve, or 50 kind of verses on how to follow the Guru, how to serve the Guru. This is an important text. It's been translated. If you want to look at that, I'm sure you can find it. What is the teaching regarding such terrifying hells as Avici? Those who slander the master will certainly stay there, it is taught. So this is found in the 50 verses on devotion to the Guru, serving the Guru. Moreover, the Dakini Vajrapanjara Tantra, a Tantra related to the Hevajra Tantra, says, if at that time a disciple who has obtained supreme empowerment transgresses the Guru's instruction, he will suffer in this world and he will stay in Avici hell in the next life. Furthermore, Vajrahidraya Tantra says, I teach that those who slander the master will stay in the hell realm, which was taught in the sutras and so forth. In mantra, it is also so that the howling hell is established as the vajra hell of Avici. And so now it quotes a commentary for the Kala Chakra Tantra. In the center of the wind mandala is the howling hell. Above that, great darkness. Similarly, the fire hell is in the fire mandala, and intense, so on and so forth. In the lower half disk of earth is the gravel water hell. In the 7 places, the hot hells and cold hells assemble along with surrounding hells. So this is statement 27. Now, interestingly, no further comments from Sobish for this statement and the next statement. I suspect because in the Dorshema and the Rinjangma, not much else is said either in the early commentaries. So in a way, it's kind of like a question mark. Okay, so what's the point? Yes, so what's the point here, right? If we go back to 11, because it points out like, well, this is the same rationale as what is said in statement 5.11. So if we look at statement 5.11, and there it is related to the body. So what is this vajra body, right? So here it says the vajra body. Here is the natural state. So here, let's look at the notes. Dojasharab summarizes the general position, saying that even though the original state of channels is inconceivable, if condensed, there are 72,000 of these channels, and if very condensed, there are 3 channels and 4 chakras. Moreover, even though the original state of the central channel and the chakras is often explained to be like an umbrella, basically this body abides as the natural state of that channel. Furthermore, even though the winds are inconceivable, in brief, there are 21,000, and if very condensed, there are 3. Moreover, even though there are explanations such as 5 primary winds, 5 secondary winds, in brief, this body is such that everything that is light and moving is wind. So if we go down, to summarize, Rinchen Changchup says that it is not true that directly perceiving channels, winds, and vital essences make manifest the original state of the Vajra body. Instead, it is maintained by Jigten Sungren that the manifestation of the unchangeable natural state of the 3 Vajras is the non-duality of samsara and nirvana. So it's the profound emptiness and cause and effect. Now, over here, at 527, it says that this has something to do with the union of method and discriminative knowledge. So the joining of the term Vajra with all kinds of phenomena in the Vajrayana context is not to emphasize that there is something like more than what the Buddha already taught in the non-Vajrayana context. Like it's not describing, an extra hell. Likewise, when we say Vajradhara, it's not describing there is a Buddha more super than the Buddhas we already know, such as Buddha Shakyamuni. So I think this is also related to that. Some people think, oh, Buddha Shakyamuni, what he taught, that's just ABC. What Vajradhara taught, or especially Dzogchen people, or what Samantabhadra, the primordial Buddha taught, that's like, something above and beyond what regular Buddha has taught. So likewise here, I also don't know. But my understanding of this statement is saying, just as, Vajradhara, right? The name that the Buddha is often called, in the Tantras, it's not like more super than Shakyamuni, the regular Buddha. So another example here is Avici hell is already said to be the lowest hell. Avici means uninterrupted. And likewise, when we say vajra hell as this terrible, terrible place, it's not saying there's anything, beyond this Avici hell, which is already known and taught. So why I think it says here, indicates the play of the union of method and discriminative knowledge. Here is more talking about the term vajra. And in statement 511 it talks about interdependence. Here it talks about the union of method and discriminative knowledge. So here I think also what it is saying is vajra is also a symbol for emptiness. Right? Yeah, vajra is also a symbol for emptiness. So what is vajra hell? Even in the deepest of these hells, even in the midst of this suffering, it is also empty. Yeah, it is also empty. This is Vajrayana's way of always reminding us that the innate nature is actually inseparable, appearance and emptiness. Or, in a different context, union of method and discriminative knowledge. Another context, merit and wisdom. Another context, compassion and wisdom. And in this context, appearances and emptiness inseparable. So even Vajra hell is appearances and emptiness inseparable. I think there is that kind of somewhere in the mix of the significance of this statement. Yeah, but it's clearly, I think, not very clear. It's clearly not very clear. This is maybe an accidental Vajrayana statement. It's clearly not very clear. And any questions or guesses on your end?
Is it basically saying that hell is hell, but it's how we perceive the circumstances?
There's something like that, yes. Yes, there's something like that. So that then links us to the previous statement's discussion, Next statement. This is an easier to understand, like less mysterious, and an important point. If the Vajra master's level of cognition is high, he pulls up his disciples. And this follows from the previous statement, even if the previous statement is unclear. It's related to that because here this statement was given in response to people claim that one does not emerge from Vajra hell until space disintegrates. Meaning like once you get into Vajra hell, you are basically practically done. Like condemned, until space disintegrates. By definition, space doesn't disintegrate. So that's like a kind of a strong way of saying, you can never get out of vajra hell. But here it says, if the vajra master's level of cognition is high, he pulls up his disciples. So here it's saying, So again, this is against a broader understanding that generally, yes, Buddha taught, nobody can make you a Buddha. Nobody can solve your problems for you. But it doesn't mean that nobody can help. So here is an instance of how a qualified vajra master with a level of knowledge, a level of seeing that is very advanced, can pull his students up. Now, of course, students, when he pulls, right, meaning he throws a rope at you, you could use the analogy, the student still has to hold on tight to the rope. If the student is not going to hold on tight to the rope, the Lama cannot really pull. It pulls the rope, the rope comes back. It pulls the rope comes back. The student, of course, has to grab. Okay, so let's see. Earlier, the Gyanasattvas have descended on the disciple and have entered his heart. So this is interesting, the discussion here. Chodra starts with visualization practice. Right? So we visualize ourselves as deity, and that deity that is visualized is called Samaya Sattva, the commitment being. And now it says the wisdom beings, the Gyanasattva, have descended on the disciples and entered their heart. If a disciple with an inferior mind does not corrupt the samayas concerning a vajra master who has perfected the realization of maturation and liberation, the deities who have descended on him are his gnosis beings, are his wisdom beings. However, if he corrupts the samayas, if the disciple corrupts the samayas, these deities turn into the executioners of the corrupted pledges, reduces his lifespan, and he falls into the vajra hell. So here, Chodra is first describing conventionally how it is said that one falls into vajra hell. So he gives the example. He says, so what is going on is, for example, how a student and a teacher forms a relationship as a vajra master and student is through the proper occurrence of empowerment. Here I want to say that we're not talking about just randomly turning up at some empowerment ritual. Personally, I don't believe that the student-disciple relationship actually has happened simply because you turn up at empowerment. Yeah, you all know how many times you have turned up at empowerments and you have really no idea what's going on, and no real bond has formed. Here it's really referring to when the bond is already formed, meaning the trust and the love is already there, and somehow that gets corrupted. Then what in the ritual was the descent of wisdom beings into the disciple, those wisdom beings, quote unquote, can even turn into executioners, which is what the Tantras say. So it does say that, you're like, whoa. Yeah, you're supposed to go, whoa, so and not take this kind of like as like weekend, self-improvement program. The point here is like, this is dead serious, Don't practice Dharma as if it's just an ornament. Oh, I feel nice. It cannot be just that. Yeah. So then he raises a question. Now, if that has happened, if such a scenario has happened, this disciple is now in this state where he or she has corrupted their samayas, their pledge, and now they're in the hell realm. So how is he pulled up from hell by that Vajra master? Since he does not abandon sentient beings, that Vajra master has the power to pull him up faster than the lifespan of other hells. So here it says, since he has not abandoned sentient beings, meaning, since the Vajra master, if they are a qualified Vajra master, meaning bodhicitta is there, then they do not abandon beings. Then that Vajra master has the power to pull him up faster than the lifespan of other hells, meaning they don't have to remain in that hell for the entire length. It is like the teaching of Denpak pulling up Tarpa Nakpo from hell, and Shunakshatra, who has gone to hell, being pulled up by the Exalted One himself, and like the Bodhisattva Surya Garbha, who pulled a trainee up from the lower realms. So this is quoting different places in the sutras and tantras where it's described how a greater being is able to pull someone out of those hells. Furthermore, it is like Geshe Putowa, who taught that one must confess to whichever of the three jewels one has committed the wrongdoing, like standing up supported by the earth, which one has fallen. So the analogy here, this Geshe Putowa says, you fell onto the ground and was hurt. But to get up from that ground, you have to push from that ground. That ground itself, that moments ago, because you fell and you hit yourself on the ground, you suffered, right? But in order to get up again, you have to push against that ground. So here it's saying, even if the reason why you are now experiencing the hell realms is the result of having corrupted or having broken the bond with the Vajra master, it is there that you are also going to be able to get out. Meaning, don't seek an out elsewhere. Because your getting out of that situation will be accomplished by the master involved in that situation. If one's pledges concerning a Vajra master who possesses knowledge, wisdom knowledge are corrupted, the intention of this Vajra statement is that one is pulled up by this Vajra master while no one else is able to pull one up. So it says here, so the meaning of this statement is, especially in the context of this Vajra relationship between teacher and disciples. If the disciple, through the disciple's fault, and this is not talking about when the master, has created the situation. This is talking about when the disciple has created the situation that puts the disciple in hell. Then the way to get out of this is through the master that is involved. It's telling us, don't go find someone else to try to pull you out. The reason is the following. In the explications of the pledges of mantra 2, it is explained that if one corrupts one's pledges with a vajra master, one exerts oneself in making confession to him until he grants permission, until he accepts. If the master has passed away and is no longer present, and if he has left neither son nor a wife, it is necessary to confess before his image and before his special deity. This is the meaning. So I think this is good advice, you know. Don't think that, oh, now I go find a new teacher. Problem solved. But again, okay, I feel, this is my opinion, this is not talking about, you know, when like the teacher has done something egregious and cause you to like lose faith. This is talking about when the student is the one that has damaged this. Then the way to fix this is the student needs to go back to the teacher and fix this, and not somebody else. And not go to somebody else. Chodra raised a rhetorical question. He says, isn't it incompatible with the teaching from the Bodhisattva chapter that by having harmed a bodhisattva, a connection with bliss is not possible? So this is a vajra statement that says that if you have harmed a bodhisattva, then there's no way you can experience happiness. Reply, no, this does not contradict there. Here, through the act of harming, indeed, one is born in the hell. Right? Now, then, through the earlier positive connection, the one who has achieved maturation, liberation, pulls one up from hell. Meaning, because there was a prior positive connection between the student and the teacher, therefore, that teacher has the ability to pull this person out. Therefore, this is the perfection of the inevitable effectiveness of virtue and non-virtue, and it lays to waste those considerations by some concerning four possibilities of cause and effect. This is some side arguments. We don't need to go look into that. So here it's saying, you know, the relationship with the Vajra Master is one that we have to treat very carefully. Yes, it can cause you, if you're not careful, it can be the reason why you fall into hell. Yeah. But that very same Lama, that because you have messed up in relation to this Lama, you are now suffering in the hell realms. Also know that that same Lama can also pull you out. Yeah, which is to say that it's not all just bad news. Now, if this Lama refuses to pull you out, then there's something wrong with the Lama. It's another way of looking at it too, you know. If this Lama refuses to pull you out, then, you know, there's a problem here. Then maybe in the first place, are you in the hell realms? Maybe not.
Is this not analogous to the using the four powers of remorse, etc., with
More specific here. More specific saying in the context of the messing up in the context of Vajrayana teacher,
But it is a
you
similar,
have to go directly to this person.
but
It's not enough to sit at home and do Vajrasattva.
right, but even if you're dealing with another person,
Uh-huh.
seeing that person as Buddha or not, I mean, there's that sort of idea, but it's the same process. You go and you are remorseful about the transgression, whatever it might be, and the remedy is with the guru, or in the case of another person, it's it's a
In actually in those teachings, it doesn't emphasize you going to that person. Mm-mm. In the general discussion of the four powers of purification, yeah, it doesn't say go, to this person and make things right.
I thought that was part of the process, that you
No.
go.
Mm-mm. I particularly emphasize during the 35 Buddhas that there is no clear emphasis that you go make amends in that way. Because somebody asked some question, I remember during the 35 Buddhas, that say, what if, like this person that I know I have disappointed, they don't accept. I said, well, actually in this practice, it doesn't say they have to accept.
Right, but don't you have to try to atone if you can?
No, there is no talk about atoning even.
Well, what about the idea that if the person does not accept or has passed away, and you go to the wife, and
This is the Vajra Guru.
but I'm talking about in the other.
No. In those, they never say that.
Okay.
Yeah, no. And there also during that discussion, I said, during the 35 Buddhas, I said, except for when it's the Vajra Guru, then you have to go to their wife, you have to go to their children, you have to go to their disciples. And this is what Chodra just said here.
Okay, but not in an ordinary
No,
relationship.
not in the ordinary relationship.
Okay.
Yeah, in the ordinary relationship, it is sufficient if you are able to clear your own mental burdens. Yeah. And of course, this teaching during the 35 Buddhas, when I talked about this, I said we got to be careful so that we don't kid ourselves and say, oh, as long as I don't feel bad about it, everything is fine. I said, you have to understand that in the Buddhist training, a lot of the emphasis is fixing your own attitude, your own mind, right? But those teachings have existed, I explained, in a cultural context where the culture makes you accountable to people. Now we live in a culture and a time where that kind of mechanism is gone, right? So then I said, as we do this mind training practice of unburdening ourselves of the guilt, right, of having wronged someone and all of that, I suggested, I said, we should find ways to make up with others too. But the method itself did not explicitly tell you you have to do that. And I explained then, I said, why? Because this method has existed until now in societies, in cultures where you have no fear that the neighbors have not made you accountable for it. The power of gossip compels you. Get it? Yeah? So I warned, during that time when we were doing the purification practice, I said, if you take only that and not understand the historical, cultural context, then you might feed your smugness of like, well, I'm done. I've purified. It's not upon me now. If they want to be upset, oh, that's their business. Be careful. Don't do that.
It has to be a sincere
Yes.
effort.
Right. Now here then it says, be careful that it is sincere, be careful that you're unburdened, right? But if it is about the Vajra Guru, no, you have to go and make amends. If they're no longer there, look for their descendants. If their biological descendants are not there, look for their spiritual descendants. If the spiritual descendants is not there, then in front of his image. And if that's not available, then his deity, as in his idam. And you have to do it until you have some sign from the idam. So all of this is I think also then, if you take it on the level of psychology, which is the mind, which is what our Buddhist training is most concerned about, then it's saying, it's emphasizing how deep this relationship should be. If we really have this Vajra relationship with a teacher, it's so deep that merely, which is not merely, but in the context of Vajra relationship, it is merely, which is merely applying the four powers in a general way will not clear your conscience. At the end, right, it is about, is your conscience clear or not? Because it's your conscience that is throwing you to Vajra hell. It's not God, it's not Buddha, much less Buddha. It's not an all-powerful God that has thrown you to the Vajra hell. It's your conscience. So to me, it's emphasizing that if it is a real Vajrayana, a Vajra relationship between teacher and students, the bond is so deep that it is not enough. The general purification is not enough. The word from the teacher, yes, I forgive you, that can pull you out of hell. Yeah. So here is not talking about like Jesus pulling you out of hell. Yeah. It's not the equivalent of that. It's not saying this, this teaching here. You see the difference? It's not emphasizing the almighty power of the Guru.
It's the relationship
Yes.
is important,
Yes.
both, that makes that hell
Yes.
abate.
Yes. I think in a more mundane way we can say, the person that so made you so upset and hurt, is also that very person that can free you. Yeah, in a mundane context or a non-dharma context, right? That certainly we have experienced, one word this person forgot to say, we are walking around in our hell. And then they only need to kind of smile in our direction. Oh, we are free from the hell now. It's the same kind of rationale here. Of course, here is not talking about this kind of like puppy love, you know. Chapter 5 on Vajrayana. This is all pertains to Vajrayana. So remember, although the implications of these statements, all the statements, the implications is of course goes in all directions, and they're all kind of related. But in the immediate context, the statements that we've looked at, they are particularly relevant on the Vajrayana level of practice. And more importantly, on the Vajrayana level of realization. We can say that we are all now, to different degree, engaging in Vajrayana practice. But know that, more importantly, is to arrive at Vajrayana realization. And that is something that they say, you know, only at the 8th Bodhisattva Bhumi are we truly on the Vajrayana level of realization.
Dr. Lai?
Yes.
What I see here is the accountability of the actions of the student and the bodhicitta of the teacher.
The guru, yes.
Yeah, to pull him out, right?
Yes, yes, absolutely. Yeah, that's a good way to put it, you know, accountability of the actions. Student needing to understand that they need to own up. And then the guru's bodhicitta. So if those two things exist, you know, are truly there, even if that relationship is very, in some ways, very fragile, or it's like the bigger the investment, right, the bigger the loss, so to say. But the statement is saying that, but, you know, even though great danger might come from it, but as long as these two sides, one having accountability, one having bodhicitta, then even if the hell realm is experienced, the teacher can pull you out. Yeah.
Dr. Lai?
Yes.
Well, I think that this statement, it clarifies me a lot what samaya means, because it is not only like a commitment, it is also like this capacity, the relationship that can pull me out of such a place with the relation with the guru. So if I see a guru and I feel like this guru might have this capacity, then I'm creating this samaja, because I'm creating this, this bond, this confidence on him. And in that way, I think that it is something different, like if I'm saying I'm committing to this and that.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think that this is, a more
Interdependence.
clear. Yeah.
Much more subtle than, it's not this, you know, rather kind of crude, you know. Oh, I have a commitment, you know. It's deeper.
Yeah.
It's more complex. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I was thinking also like, but this is like the real samaya, but we're training like in samaya also, trying to bring confidence on our teachers in that
Yes.
way.
Yes. And confidence in ourselves, you know. So in some ways, right, the samaya, the main samaya of Vajrayana is no other than bodhicitta in a general Mahayana context. Yeah, in the general Mahayana context, it's general. In Vajrayana, it's specific, it's personalized between student and disciple and teacher.
Yes.
So, we finished chapter 5. Chapter 7 has 15 statements. Okay? And at the stage of Buddhahood, there's no distinction between the two truths. And so when Buddhahood is achieved, the two truths becomes inseparable. But other people claim that there are two truths at the stage of Buddhahood. So this is the verse that we're going to start with on Monday. So that's it for today. Yeah. A reminder that tomorrow Kenjen Rinpoche continues teaching on this one section of the text that he taught, that he composed. It's called Samsara and Nirvana, two hands, two sides of the same hand. Particularly that section on how to purify, how to clear samsara. And he will teach up to the section on bodhicitta. Because there after bodhicitta is idam, then guru yoga, and so it's a fivefold path. But he'll teach up until the bodhicitta section, and he might teach a little bit more. It begins, I believe, our time at 10. Our time is in New York time at 10, I believe. I will share that announcement again, so that if those of you who want to participate can participate, then you will be able to join on Zoom. Yeah. So that's it. All right. Chanju sem chorim buje magye banam ge gyuche ge ba nyam ba me ba yang go ne gong du bel wor shu.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Larry, take care.
Bye, Larry.
Thank you.
Hang in.
Bye-bye.
Hang
Yep.
in
Thank
there.
you.
Thank you.
Guru, you're mute. We cannot hear you.
Oh, I say stay safe. Have a good Easter weekend. And remember that only Jesus got resurrected. You are not going to get resurrected if you die. So stay safe, okay?